been over a month since 4-year-old Gus Lamont vanished from his family's remote South Australian property. 30 days of searching, 30 days of silence, and 30 days of questions that no one seems able or willing to answer. The search has officially been scaled back. Police say every inch of the land has been covered, but the boy is still missing. And now, for the first time since that day, his grandmother, the last person to see him alive, has spoken publicly. Her words have reignited the conversation, reopened old wounds, and reminded Australia that the story of Gus Lamont is far from over. If you stand for truth and justice, like, share, and subscribe to Shadow Detective. Comment where you're watching from, and what you believe really happened to Gus Lamont. Because even after the search ends, the truth never should. The Lamont family's property sits deep in South Australia's mid-north, a stretch of land where horizon meets horizon, and silence has its own weight. It's a place shaped by wind, dust, and distance. To those who live there, it's home. But to outsiders, it's a reminder of how easy it is to disappear in the Australian outback. On the day Gus vanished, September 27, 2025, he'd been playing in the sand near the family homestead, just a few meters from where his grandmother, Josie Murray, was inside. It was an ordinary Saturday, the kind that feels safe simply because it's familiar. But that sense of safety wouldn't last. Within hours, police, local volunteers, and emergency services from across the region converged on the area. Search helicopters traced grid patterns over the property, while SES crews scoured every dry creek bed and fence line. For days, the region pulsed with urgency, hundreds of people united by one goal: to bring Gus home. But this landscape, so open and exposed, hid more questions than answers. Because for all its vastness, nothing was found. No clothes, no footprints, no trace at all. And in a community where everyone knows everyone, unease began to settle in. Because sometimes, even the safest places have shadows. It began quietly, the kind of still afternoon when time seems to slow. According to reports, Gus Lamont was playing outside his grandmother's home on the family's remote pastoral property near Yunta, South Australia. Around 5 p.m., his grandmother, Josie Murray, went to check on him. But the sand where he'd been playing was empty. At first, she searched nearby, calling his name, scanning the surrounding paddocks and the open plain that stretches for kilometers in every direction. When she couldn't find him, she expanded her search. But hours would pass before police were notified. That delay, roughly 3 hours, became one of the case's most debated details. Why did it take so long? Why wasn't the alarm raised immediately? By the time emergency services arrived, the sun had set, and darkness had swallowed the land. The first night of the search was frantic. SES volunteers and local farmers used torches and spotlights, calling out into the stillness. Helicopters equipped with thermal imaging swept the area. But the temperature had dropped sharply. Each hour that passed deepened the fear that Gus, just 4 years old, might not survive the night. Over the following days, the search expanded to cover nearly 600 square kilometers of terrain, an immense area of scrub, sand, and saltbush. Police dogs were deployed, drones were used, but not a single clue surfaced. No small footprints in the dust, no items of clothing, no signs of struggle, just emptiness. And that emptiness grew louder with every unanswered question. Because in the case of Gus Lamont, it wasn't just a child that vanished, it was the sense of certainty itself. In the first few days, the search for Gus Lamont became one of the largest coordinated efforts in South Australia in recent memory. Police, SES, and volunteers scoured every direction from the family's homestead. The landscape, though vast, was open, flat, and sparsely vegetated. Search coordinators said visibility was good, which only deepened the confusion. If a child had simply wandered off, someone should have seen something. Yet nothing turned up, no trail, no tracks, no trace. As the days turned into a week, the tone of the operation shifted from hopeful to methodical. Detectives began revisiting the timeline, interviewing family members, and examining inconsistencies in statements. According to reports, Gus's grandmother, Josie, who was the last known person to see him, had been watching him play near the sandpit outside the home. She said she stepped inside briefly, and when she returned, he was gone. That simple window of absence, minutes perhaps, became the most scrutinized moment in the entire investigation. Then came the matter of the delay. Police confirmed that nearly 3 hours had passed before emergency services were contacted. In missing child cases, that gap is crucial. Every minute counts. Investigators later emphasized that the early stages, the golden hours, are when the chances of finding a child alive are highest. The public wanted answers. Why the delay? What was happening in that 3-hour window? Police did not suggest wrongdoing, but stated that they needed to account for every action taken during that period. Search experts described the terrain as unforgiving, heat during the day, freezing temperatures at night, and an expanse where a child could easily become disoriented. Still, those same experts quietly acknowledged what many were thinking. If Gus had wandered, there should have been evidence. Footprints, drag marks, discarded items, but there was nothing. By the 8th day, officials began to scale back the search. Despite helicopters, drones, and hundreds of ground personnel, there was no sign of Gus. And that's when another shift began. The search was no longer about rescue. It was about recovery. But as one volunteer told reporters, off record, "You can't recover what you can't find." The land had gone silent. Yet silence doesn't always mean absence. Sometimes it means something is being hidden. But the land wasn't the only thing hiding something. As the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into a month, theories began to circulate, some grounded in possibility, others drifting into painful speculation. The first and simplest theory was that Gus wandered off and succumbed to the elements. Police initially treated the disappearance as a tragic case of a child lost in harsh country terrain. It made sense on paper, the open expanse, the isolation, the dangers of exposure. But that explanation began to unravel under scrutiny. The search area was massive, methodical, and conducted by trained experts with aerial support. Nothing was missed. Nothing was found. And that absence became its own evidence. If Gus had wandered, anything, should have surfaced. The second theory focused closer to home, the possibility of an accident, something that might have occurred on the property itself. In rural regions, hazards are everywhere: old wells, tanks, machinery, even water troughs. Police confirmed they'd examined and drained multiple sites nearby. Again, no trace, no biological evidence, no sign of an accident. Then there was the third, and most unsettling, theory: foul play. It's important to note, authorities have never charged or publicly accused anyone in connection with Gus's disappearance. But within investigative circles, when every physical lead dries up, detectives must consider all possibilities, including human involvement. The 3-hour delay before calling police remained a sticking point. While officers did not label it suspicious, it became a central question: what happened during that window? Reports suggest tension existed within the family, particularly between Gus's father and grandmother. In interviews, this dynamic was described as strained, though neither party has spoken publicly in detail about the argument that allegedly took place before Gus vanished. Whether that dispute had any bearing on the disappearance is unconfirmed, but in the absence of evidence, it became one of the few threads left to pull. Others speculated about an abduction scenario, but this theory faced its own hurdles. The property sits off a remote dirt track, kilometers from the nearest main road. Detectives found no tire tracks, footprints, or signs of forced entry. For a stranger to arrive unnoticed and leave undetected would have required extraordinary timing and luck. So each theory answered something, but none explained everything. Because behind every possible answer was a larger, more haunting question. How can a child simply vanish from open land, without sound, without struggle, without trace? And for investigators, that question wasn't just a mystery. It was a wound, one that refused to close. Behind every missing person's case are the lives quietly unraveling in its shadow. For Gus Lamont's family, time has not moved forward. It's folded in on itself. Each sunrise feels like the same morning they lost him. His mother has remained largely out of the public eye, choosing silence over speculation. Those close to her describe a grief that exists in cycles: hope, disbelief, anger, and back again. Every update, every headline, every rumor pulls her deeper into a reality she never asked to live in. His father, once a private man, has found himself at the center of public scrutiny. Social media conversations have dissected his actions, his words, even the tone of his voice. Yet beyond the noise, those who know him say he's a man devastated by the unexplainable and tormented by questions he cannot answer. Then there's the grandmother, the woman who was with Gus that morning, the last to see him alive. For weeks, she stayed silent, avoiding media and attention, until recently. When she finally spoke, it wasn't to point fingers or defend herself, but to express the simple truth that she wishes more than anyone for this nightmare to end. In her account, Gus had been playing happily outside, something he'd done countless times before. She turned her back only briefly. When she looked again, he was gone. No sound, no struggle, just an empty yard and the stillness of the morning. Her words have reignited debate, but also a deep empathy. Because in her voice, many heard not guilt, but unbearable loss. Investigators, too, have carried their own kind of grief. Officers who searched for Gus have spoken about the toll of looking for a child they could not find. Some still drive through the area off-duty, scanning the landscape, hoping for something missed. And for the local community, the neighbors, farmers, and volunteers who join the search, the disappearance has left a scar that won't fade. In small towns, everyone knows everyone. And when one person vanishes, the whole town feels it. As days continue without resolution, the emotional weight has become collective, a shared sadness, heavy as the red dust that coats the region. For those still waiting, time hasn't moved at all. A month has passed since Gus Lamont disappeared, 30 days that feel both endless and empty. The search teams have scaled back, the media presence has faded, but for those closest to the case, the silence has only grown heavier. Investigators continue to treat the case as active. Police have reiterated that no one has been ruled out, and no lead is too small. Each tip that comes in is cataloged, checked, and cross-referenced against the vast record of the search. But so far, no discovery, no trace, no closure. And that's what makes this case so haunting. There is no clear villain, no confession, no definitive trail, just questions suspended in time, and a family suspended with them. In the days since Gus vanished, his name has echoed across social media, national news, and community vigils. Strangers have left flowers at rural fences. Messages of solidarity pour in from across Australia and beyond. Reminders that even in the quietest corners of the country, people care deeply about a child they've never met. The grandmother's recent words, her first public account, reopened the wound, but also reignited hope. Because every time someone speaks, every time a new piece of the puzzle is revisited, there's a chance that something overlooked may finally be seen. For detectives, the mission is unchanged. Find Gus, and bring truth to the surface, however long it takes. For his family, that truth is the only thing that matters now. If you have any information, no matter how small, contact the Northern Territory Police, or reach out anonymously through Crime Stoppers. Every detail could make the difference. And if you believe every story deserves answers, share this video, and help keep Gus Lamont's name alive. Because silence helps no one. And awareness keeps the light on in dark places. Because sometimes, the smallest voices need the loudest echo.